Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show endeavors to cover the most important leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Bill Bracken, the passionate founder and executive director of Bracken's Kitchen, who will share his inspiring leadership journey and speak to a leadership concept we're calling leadership is influence. For those unfamiliar with Bracken's Kitchen, it's a nonprofit founded in 2013 that works via food rescue, culinary training, and a community feeding program to rescue, repurpose, and restore both food and lives. So welcome to the show, Bill. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Chris. Truly an honor to be here speaking about something that's important to me, leadership. So thanks for having me join you.
Yeah, you bet. We're grateful to have you, lucky to have you, and interested to dig in to a number of things connected to nonprofit leadership. So let's kind of start with your leadership journey and how you, let's say, ended up becoming the leader you are today.
Well, I think I have to start out with saying when you first asked me about that, I was a little hesitant because I don't know that I have the faith in my leadership that maybe I should, but it's probably because of that journey. And as I think about growing up in this small town in Kansas and the values that was instilled in me in middle America, and then fast forward to finding myself in what the best described as a TV show, Hell's Kitchen, if you've ever seen that. That was the world I grew up in, the culinary world, and it was as big a dichotomy as you can ever imagine. This small town where everybody loved and cared for each other. And then I'm in this world where I'm called a stupid blank American 10 times a day by my European chefs that I work for. And it was a crazy dichotomy that I never could have imagined. And I literally spent years in a Hell's Kitchen kind of environment. And I often said, and I still do say, that I never was blessed with a lot of strong leaders that had influence on me, a lot of strong chefs and with culinary skill. But like so many things, Chris, you go to school to learn a skill, a trade, become a doctor, become a chef, whatever it is. But no one ever taught you along the way about leadership. Maybe you learn to become a great doctor and someday you have your own practice and someday you got to be a businessman and you got to lead your staff. And being a chef's the same way. There's so much focus on being a great culinarian. The leadership part has escaped so many people. So it really has been a unique journey that really came full circle back in 2007, 2008, when I reconnected with my faith and how I was brought up. And I realized it's got to be different. I mean, there's got to be something more to the work we do than the meals that we serve. And that was really the beginning of my journey to a different type of leadership.
Yeah, that's great. And so you came from the culinary world and then moved into nonprofit directly?
Yeah, it was quite a journey. 2008, when the economy tanked. Those of us that are a little bit older remember that time when the housing market crashed and the world turned upside down here, especially in Southern California. And that's when I first saw a lot of really good people losing their jobs and struggled just to put a meal on the table. And I often say the face of hunger changed right before our eyes. Same thing happened during COVID when suddenly people were thrust into the lines of the unemployed. And that
Yep.
was when I first thought that God was kind of calling me to do something. And I never didn't know what that was. It took me a while to figure it out. But in 2011, after navigating 3 years of tough times economy wise in the hotel world, I was thrust into the lines of the unemployed. And I kind of really knew that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And um, suddenly I'm free of this burden and worry of, providing for my family, which is weird because suddenly I couldn't provide for my family. But, my worst fear was always losing my job. And suddenly it happened. And I realized the world didn't come to an end, the sky didn't
Wow.
fall, and life goes on. So that was really the start of a pretty amazing journey for me that led us to where we are today.
Right, right. And how did you decide that you wanted to start a nonprofit? I mean, how does one suddenly go from a 9 to 5? And your experience was never 9 to 5. I
Yeah.
know being a chef, especially in some of these really high pressure kitchens that you're probably talking about, it's never 9 to 5. But how do you go from having that kind of job and maybe the only thing that you ever knew to going into the nonprofit world?
I appreciate you asking that. And people ask that kind of question. I always preface it that it's never my intention to push my faith or preach to people, but I can't share my story without talking about God's impact on my life. And it really was between 2008 and 2011 as we were going through this economic crisis. And I was working for one of the richest men in Southern California, in Newport Beach, and the world just changed, the economy changed, and that's when it was really put on my heart to do something, to use my skills for something more meaningful than just feeding the top 2%. And like any brave man of faith, I ignored it and put my head down and just kept on working. And then,
Yeah.
when I said I lost my job, and that was, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, that really was God kicking me in the rear end and saying, "Get on with it, Bill. I'm calling you to do something more meaningful." And I had no idea what that was. I knew nothing about nonprofits. I mean, as a chef, I participated in a lot of fundraisers. I cooked at fancy houses and hotels everywhere to raise money for, you name the nonprofit in Orange County, I've raised money for it at some point in time. But suddenly I'm called into action on the other side, and I didn't really know what that looked like. It was quite a journey. From 2011 to the beginning of 2013, when Bracken's Kitchen was founded, I often say mine's a modern day Jonah story. Jonah
Yeah.
was called to go this way, but instead he went that way and ended up in the belly of a fish. And I got to tell you, I ended up in a unique spot, not the belly of a fish, but it was a unique place. It's like, okay, this isn't working. I got to stop running. And again, I didn't know anything about nonprofits. But I knew I had to start doing something. And it's one of the many moments. And I went on LegalZoom.com and took $2,000 out of my bank, even though we didn't really have a whole lot of money then because I wasn't working, and went through the process to start a nonprofit. And all I knew is if God's calling me to feed people, the only way I know how to do that is by cooking. I wasn't going to run a food bank or a pantry. And so we, started Bracken's Kitchen in motion. I, at one point in time, tried really hard to keep one foot solid in the for-profit world. We built a concept called Let Us Eat. There was going to be a restaurant. I envisioned being in the South Coast metro area. And certain nights of the week, we'd morph into Let Us Feed. And we'd open our doors to the less fortunate and provide free meals. And that was just me really trying to hold on to this past life of mine. And for many reasons, I won't waste your time with today. We knew that wasn't going to work. And, I never drank a lot of coffee growing up at all. I still don't like coffee. I'll drink coffee flavored sugary drinks like Frappuccinos, but Starbucks became my home. And, one night as we're trying to figure out one day as I was trying to figure out what this is going to look like, I'm sitting at Starbucks and a food truck went down the road, and ding, 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 all the light bulbs went off. And it's like, okay, I can get a food truck. I can cook. I can bring food to people. And that's really where it all started. And we founded Bracken's Kitchen, and, it started with the food truck. We still have one today. It looks much different now than I maybe envisioned it, but
Yeah.
it's working, and we're blessed to be in this spot that we're at.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jonah probably didn't know what Nineveh was going to look like when he was told to go there, but
Exactly.
you're on your way to Nineveh too. I wanted to pause on something you said earlier, which I think is an important element of nonprofit leadership that doesn't get enough airtime, I suppose. And that's this concept of leaders growing up through an industry or an organization, doing something and excelling at it, and being known for it, but then being expected vis-a-vis that experience to somehow be able to manage people or
Yeah,
manage an entire organization or know balance sheets, know things that were never part of the training, but
yeah,
just by virtue of you being excellent as a chef,
yeah,
sure, or doctor
yeah,
or
yeah,
fundraiser, well,
yeah,
of course you should just, because you're excellent at that, you should also be excellent at all these other things, and that's just
yeah,
never true. These other things that you have to also know, like leading within a nonprofit, are learn skills. Now, if you have the characteristics of a good leader, certain things are maybe second nature to you, great, but you still have to learn and grow
yeah,
into the role. And I'm
yeah.
sure every day you're continuing to grow and learn the role, right?
And now, yeah, it's
Which is
interesting you say
great.
that because I think two things that really helped me along my journey from a chef culinarian to a leader was, as a kid, I always say that Curious George was my favorite cartoon. And if you knew anything about Curious George, he was curious. And I got in more trouble as a kid because I took something apart to see how it worked, and I couldn't put it back together. And dad came home and had to fix it. In fact, when I was 15 and I had a motorcycle and the transmission wasn't working right, I was like, I'm going to fix it. And took the motor off the bike, took the transmission apart. And I'm like, I can't see what's wrong with it. And had to put the whole thing in a box and take it over to the motorcycle mechanic to put it back together. But
Right.
I've always been curious, and that's really served me well. I'm not, and I don't say this boldly or bravely, but I'm not afraid of trying new things. I'm not afraid of
Right.
anything. I say it's like, failure is hard, but I don't believe in failure. To be honest with you, you have opportunities to learn and grow, and if something doesn't work out and you don't learn from it, then you can call it a failure. But otherwise, it's just opportunities to learn and grow. So, Curious George was one of the big things, and being curious that helped me. And I also worked with a leader who wasn't a very nice human being, and he ran the food and beverage division at a hotel I worked at, and he often chastised me, dare I say, cursed at me, and told me I was going to be just like my executive chef. I would be a loser chef who knew how to cook but couldn't do anything else. And you challenge me, I'm gonna rise to the occasion. I love a
That's
good
great.
challenge, but I mean that just really propelled me to learn and want to know more than just the kitchen, the culinary. So those two
That's
things
great.
I think really push me to realize I need to be more than a good cook if I want to lead a kitchen
Yeah.
someday.
Yeah. I've often seen examples of leaders that have really grown or done important things or extraordinary things because people told them they couldn't, or people
Yeah,
told them they were less than, or they wouldn't amount to something. And it's fascinating that we would be celebrating the influence of people that were so negative, right?
yeah,
But it's a part of the success story for a lot of leaders. Now, I don't want to focus on that. I'd much rather
yeah,
actually focus on the people that had a more positive
yeah,
influence on your
yeah,
leadership journey. Who
yeah.
who are a couple of the folks that you can point to that have really had a strong influence on the type of leader you are today?
I think, well, I always got to give it up to God. I mean, the impact that my faith and God and Jesus has had on me has been tremendous, especially over the last 10 years. But I think other than that, my father has been just such a tremendous influence on me that I never realized for so many years, Chris. He was a quiet man. He wasn't a guy that's going to sit and put his arm on my shoulder and give me strong advice. He was a man who led through strength and courage. And he was a silent example of the type of person I needed to be. And whether you're leading your family, whether you're leading a church, a nonprofit, a kitchen, it doesn't matter. You have to be a man of courage, and you have to be a man of strength. You have to be a man of conviction. And you got to balance that all with love sacrifice. And, that we talk a lot about servant leadership. And really, it's just the willingness to be sacrificed and to be influenced for others. So, Dad, as I got older, I realized, oh my gosh, like so many young kids and arrogant, angry young boy that I was, is like I never saw the good that my father had in me for a long time. As I grew, I realized the best parts of me came from him.
No, that's great. So just reflecting back on the last couple minutes of our conversation, I've heard you talk about courage coming from an example of from your father, but then this curiosity that you've always had, and the willingness to take some risks as well as being a major part of your leadership journey and your leadership story. So let's pivot real quickly to the philosophy that you have, and feel free to incorporate any of the things that I just mentioned, right? Because they're part of that journey. But as you think about your own leadership within Bracken's Kitchen, your leadership of the organization as a nonprofit leader, what kind of philosophy, belief system, what would you share about how you would like to be known as a nonprofit leader?
Absolutely. I think, as you know, Chris, there's so many books out there on
Oh,
leadership, self-help, everything, and everybody has ideas, and everybody has thoughts, and everybody has feelings about it. But at the end of the day, I think about, for me, leadership and how I want to be known. It really comes down to the heart, that I actually care.
perfect.
You talked about this podcast in general and leadership as influence. We all have influence on people, whether we realize it or not. You drive down the road and maybe someone cuts you off and you give them a bad look, or you honk at them or yell at them. That's influence. So unfortunately, it's negative, and somebody just made an accident, didn't see you and cut you off, and you just had a negative influence on them just because they were human and made a mistake. And the same is true on the other side. If we can really recognize how much opportunity we have on a daily basis to have influence on people. I mentioned Starbucks earlier. I mean, my wife taught me this. The other person that's had tremendous impact on me is like, when we first met, we'd go jogging together, and we were living in LA at the time, and she said hi to everybody. We're jogging down the road, a homeless guy. Good morning. I mean, like, Molly, what are you doing? You're talking to everybody. But I mean,
Right.
it took me back to my childhood when you're driving down the road in Kansas and you pass a car, you wave to them. You may
Yeah.
not know who they are, but you just wave to them. It's just a way of life of loving and caring for people. So, when I think about where I am today, every day I have countless opportunities to have an impact on somebody, hopefully for good.
Yeah.
Whether it's my leadership and how I'm actually leading them in the kitchen, or whether it's just that brief interaction I have with someone on the street.
Well, that's wonderful. I love that. I love that. I know in a previous conversation you had mentioned Craig Rochelle.
Yeah,
I think that's how you say the name. So tell me a little bit about that connection to you and that lesson.
absolutely. I think I fell in love with podcasts during COVID. Never had time for podcasts, but when we shifted here at the kitchen with COVID, and we had to divide our staff up with two different shifts. I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and here before 5. Usually by 4, we're done by 12 or 1, so that we can clean the kitchen, separate out. Then a PM crew comes in. So me and a couple other leaders were here in the morning, and then 2 or 3 leaders at night. And suddenly I had more time on my hand than I ever had. I was actually working an 8-hour day. It happened to be from 4 in the morning till noon or 5 to 1.
Sure.
But suddenly, so I started listening to podcasts. Found Craig Rochelle. I didn't know at the time, but his church, Life Church, is the founder of the YouVersion Bible app, which is the most downloaded and used Bible app in the world. I even use it. But he has a Craig Rochelle Leadership podcast, and it was tremendous listening to him during COVID, especially, and the things he talked about. But he's the one who first introduced the notion of leadership as influence, and I've never heard that before. And at first, I thought that sounds really, really simple. There's more to it than that, but I continued to listen to his podcast, and it is. I mean, what I mentioned earlier. As leaders, we're going to influence people, period.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
influence them to do a better job, to get the work done, to excel, to grow, to help run a better company, a better business, whatever it is. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. Many ways you can do it, but I spent years working for a man whose influence was fear, and that's how he managed people. And that's not what I want to be known as. So my influence is, we talk from time to time about Jesus, the loving man that he was when he walked this earth, whether you believe he was God or not. And there's also the Jesus that flipped over the tables in the temple. So, as a leader, sometimes you have to be firm. Sometimes you have to hold people accountable, but you can always do it in a loving and kind way. So again, that whole concept of influence, I actually was talking to one of my employees in the kitchen yesterday. He was having a rough day, and I put my, he's kind of, down on work and everything. And I just put my arm around him and like, someday, I won't mention his name, you're going to miss me and you're going to miss this place. It's like, what do you mean? I said, this isn't going to last forever. And someday you'll move on. We all get old, we all retire, and you'll look back and you'll think of these times that you worked here as some of the best times in your life and how much good you did helping other people. So hold on to that when times are stressful, when you're overloaded, you're burdened or whatever, because someday we'll look back and these will be the most cherished times in our life. We just don't realize it right now. And that's just one simple example of how I try to have a positive influence every day on the people I encounter.
Yeah, well, it's a great introduction to the concept, leadership as influence, leadership is influence. So let's keep diving
Yeah.
into the topic. And what I wanted to start with was your thoughts on empathy in action. And I'm sure there are some moments that you can talk to me about where there are these examples of empathy in action. I know you famously talk about Ruby in some of your stories. And so, and if you want to tell me about Ruby or tell the audience about Ruby or anyone else, but tell us about empathy in action.
Well, I will tell you this before I do, Craig. Sorry, talking about Craig Rochelle. Now I'm going to call you Craig.
That's fine. Sounds like a good person to.
The biggest, I think, as I look at where I am today in this organization that are running, and I'm in this office so much, man, I miss the days of when it was just me in a food truck. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't even on salary then. It was the beginning and our family was struggling. Life was really, really hard then. And we had no idea where this organization would go 10 years ago. But that was some of the most impactful times in my life. That's where, God really impacted me and helped reshape my leadership from a more empathetic point of view. And you had mentioned Ruby. I got countless stories. I wish I had some fresh ones because I don't get to go out in the food truck anymore. And those were the moments I'll remember forever. But when I started Bracken's Kitchen, for many reasons, I was focused on the low-income population, those people living on the economic cliff that had to choose between food and other life necessities on a regular basis. And part of that was from some guidance I got from my pastor. But most of it, truth be told, was just because I was afraid of the homeless population. And there's people everywhere, with signs on the street, hungry, will work for food. Big, bad, tough Bill Bracken was scared of homeless people. So I had this idea, this notion, this business plan that kept me away from those people. And it was an irrational fear. I wasn't physically afraid of a homeless person. It's just, I don't know. I spent my whole adult life driving to Newport Beach or Beverly Hills to work. And suddenly I'm, feeding the bottom 10%. And as usual, with everything I planned, God kind of chuckled. He had other plans for me. And at that time, we had a regular Tuesday night feeding program, an after school program for homeless kids in Santa Ana. And it was just an amazing several years there. There's a generation of Hispanic kids that call me Uncle Bill. Some of them I still get to see every now and then. Some of them I have their cell numbers and I text them. It's a wonderful time in my life in this journey of Bracken's Kitchen. But this is when this whole thing about food waste in America is really becoming a thing. And no matter how well I planned, when I got done on Tuesday night, I had leftover food. I'm like, I gotta do something about this. I can't throw it away. I'd go back to the kitchen that we shared. I'd try to feed the few people working there, but I knew I had to stop throwing this food away. And, Ross Street House, where we went every Tuesday night, was a quarter mile away from, still there. The Civic Center at that time, 480 people were living in the Civic Center, the big homeless crisis there. So I went down there like, I'm going to find some way to feed somebody there. And I had some real rough stop and starts there, trial and error. Made the mistake of pulling the food truck right in the middle of several hundred homeless people. And suddenly I'm mobbed by people that are hungry, and I didn't have enough food to feed them all. So I knew that wasn't going to work. So I quickly got smart, bought to-go containers. And before I left Ross Street House, I took all the leftover food and packaged up in individual meals and set out down to the Civic Center. I found a group of homeless people living off of Flower Street in this little enclave, probably anywhere from 8 to 15 of any given time. And I pulled up there the first time I saw them there. I came out with the box of food, dropped it on a bench. I said, "Hey guys, I brought you food. Enjoy." Took off as quick as I could because I was scared of those homeless people.
Sure.
And that became a thing over and over again every Tuesday night. And slowly I would spend another minute or two there, or a few seconds, and I talked to them. And over time, I got to know them more and more. And as I pulled up on Honk, Betsy Zuga Horn, and come out and feed them and start learning their names, James and John and Ruby and Toma and David and Luis and so many others. Start talking to them. I always kept my distance. They're unclean. They're unhealthy. I got keep away from me. But I just got to know them. They started asking me always. It was, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill, do you have any water on the truck? Hey, excuse me, Mr. Bill, do you have any more bread, or do you have any napkins, or kind of basic things?" And then it starts shifting, and suddenly, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill, do you have any socks on your truck? I need a new pair of socks." Or, "Do you have any fingernail clippers?" And it started being that I start getting a few things and collecting them and give to them. Ruby one time asked me, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill, do you have a hairbrush?" I'm like, "No, Ruby, I don't have a hairbrush on my truck." One time as I was leaving, she this is the same old routine, Chris. I would drop off, talk to him a couple minutes, as I'm leaving my back to him. It's always, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill," by one of them. And one day it's Ruby, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill." "Yes, Ruby, do you have any women's underwear?" she asked me. I'm like, "Ruby, no, I don't wear women's underwear." She started laughing. She realized the craziness of her request. And Ruby was a 58-year-old homeless woman. Her daughter and grandkids would come and visit her there every now and then. I'm like, all these people that are homeless, they have tragic stories. They're different, but how they ended up there. And I, like so many people, judge them. But yeah, one day I was getting ready to leave. I'm heading out. Ruby said, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill," as usual. I turned around to see what she wanted, and she was right in front of me. Like, whoa, this is as close as I've ever been to them. And I'm like uncomfortable. I'm like, "Yes, Ruby, how can I help you?" She's like, "Can I just get a hug?" I'm like, "What? A hug?" And I was panicked. I mean, this woman was just behind the tree relieving herself a few minutes ago. Right. I mean, close to her, you smell it, and it's like, oh my gosh. And there was no getting out of it. And I realized, so I went in for what my sister Nan's patented one-arm side jobs, I call it, where she just comes in from the side and tries to give you a hug. Right. And Ruby just grabbed hold of me and held on for dear life. And the whole time I'm just panicked. It's like going through my mind, all the whatever that I'm coming in contact right now. This woman probably hadn't had a bath in months, and the smell and everything. And I don't say that judgmentally. This is just what was going through my mind. I'm being very honest.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't know if she hugged me for 10 seconds or 10 minutes, but it seemed like an eternity. When she finally let go, I just turned to run. And right behind her was James. He says, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill, can I get a hug too?" And it's then I realized behind James was John and the whole guy. And I ended up, oh my God, I'm like, okay. And I hugged every one of them. And I went and got in the truck to leave. They went, sat down, and started eating. And I sat there and realized, oh my God, these people, everything they own, everything they have is right there in that little spot in a shopping cart or a bag or a box. And of all the things they need right now, they just needed to know that someone cares about them, that their life matters, that they're worth something. And I couldn't leave. I had a selfie stick on the truck. I don't even know if those are a thing anymore. I'm not a selfie kind of guy, Chris.
Right,
We
right.
had it there for social media, and I grabbed it for some reason. I don't know if it was for protection, just in case. But and I sat there with him while they ate. I actually hooked my phone up to it, and John and I sang Ruby Tuesday to Ruby. I mean, there's a video of her on Facebook still with me, still, with us singing to her. And it was just a monumental moment in my life where God had really moved my heart and realized that food is just the conduit that I've been given, that Bracken's Kitchen has been given to reach people. You know, one of our early volunteers came up with the tagline, delivering hope, one tasty meal at a time. And I think that's really important because I've learned along the journey that we can do with a lot of things in our life. We can lose a lot of things in our life.
Yeah.
But when we lose hope, life is over. And that's what so many of the homeless population are living with. They've given up hope. And
Yeah.
therefore they're just stuck there forever. So if we can deliver hope in some way to our staff, to our volunteer, to the people we feed, then we can really have influence on people, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The empathy in action is a great lesson to learn. Interestingly, I think there's probably people, yourself included, that thought, oh, well, in this moment, need to help them. But interestingly enough, I think they helped you
Oh
uh,
yeah,
in
yeah,
equal measure because you needed to get over this false understanding or lack of humanity maybe that you had in the moment
yeah,
around, right? The fear, whatever it is, you know better than I do what
yeah.
that was.
Well, that was really a full circle moment. I've shared often with people that if I brought up my computer screen here and shared, I could show a folder full of that folder just called words. I used to carry it around on a floppy disk 30 years ago. And now
Right.
it's obviously on a hard drive, and it's got files of poems, song lyrics, quotes. I've always looked for inspiration and other things, reading and stuff. I look for meaning and purpose. When I'm struggling, I'm looking for something to help me through a difficult time. Um, and many years ago, I found a quote from Gandhi, and it really made me think, what does that mean? And this is long before I started a nonprofit, and I held on to it. And it's through this journey of Bracken's Kitchen that I finally understood that meaning. And I've often said that Bracken's Kitchen has done more for me than anyone I've ever served. It's really changed me at a soul level. And I mean, God has used this servant uh, organization to change me, like you said. And
Yeah.
that quote from Gandhi, that the surest way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others.
Oh, right.
So, leaders were so many leaders I hear from them. We got to be strong. We got to be tough. We can't show weakness. We can't do this. We can't do that. I mean, for years, you can't be friends with your employees. Don't you dare ever see an employee outside of work, because then it's all these things you were taught about what it meant to be a leader. And that's not leadership. That's authoritarianism. And that's not what we're called to be in the world today. And if we can't show weakness, if we can't show humility, if we can't show you're human, that you struggle, how are we ever going to have an influence on people?
Yeah, yeah, great. That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, there's also this element of dignity and respect that you talk about in connection to leadership. Um, and I'd love to kind of explore that some more. In fact, I think you have this sort of famous quote that feeding people isn't the same as nourishing them. And I'd love to just kind of have you share a little bit more about how dignity and respect are important to your leadership journey.
Absolutely. And to add to that quote, so on the side of our building, feeding people isn't the same as nourishing them. And what I always add to into that is, and we aim to nourish more than just the body, but the soul and the spirit. And part of my journey with Bracken's Kitchen was volunteering at other nonprofits, trying to learn the nonprofit world. What does this look like? Come alongside others. And one nonprofit that I spent a lot of time with, wonderful, wonderful organization, but I realized they missed the power of food concept that I hold on to so dearly. And they'd go out with a vehicle and serve meals all the time. I'm being very general because people might know what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to be critical at all.
Yeah, of
but
course.
they went out with a truck and they fed meals regularly. And I went and volunteered a couple times. And one time we pulled up behind a church in Huntington Beach, opened up the truck, set out some tables, started serving some food, threw out some extra clothes on the table who wanted some food. So a good service that they were providing, but there was no tables, there was no chairs. I looked around and there's a homeless people sitting on the curb right beside the dumpster eating. And it's like, I got to do better than that. I come from five diamond background. How could we serve them in a way that's more dignified and honorable to the human spirit? And again, not that this nonprofit didn't care, but they just missed that mark. And that had a profound impact on me. And so when we came out with the food truck, we wanted to have a safe place. We wanted to have tables and chairs, tablecloths. We wanted to have music. We wanted to put on a little event for people, a little private party. And that was the beginning. And we wouldn't go out with the truck unless all those pieces were in place. And we had people calling us all the time. Can you bring the food truck up out here? Can you go there? And without that, we just wouldn't do it. Laundry Love, which is a great nationwide movement that there's still one in Huntington Beach, and they meet every month at a laundromat somewhere. And homeless people know to come there, and they do the laundry for free for them. They'll give them haircuts, they'll feed them, and we start supporting that. And they really balked at the whole table and chair thing. But I insisted, if you want me to come out there with the truck, you're gonna have to get that. And they did that, and they got that. And afterwards, I remember countless conversations. What a game changer it was to be able to sit at a table, someone to talk to them, to just love on them. And that's the whole dignity piece. I mean, I know there's a world of people out there that want to check a box, businesses that want to check a box, and they're doing good. And that's fine. But if you really want to have an impact, if you really want to have influence on people, you got to be willing to be inconvenienced. You got to be willing to go the extra mile. Otherwise, you're checking a box. And we just want to do more than that. I mean, I would want to be served that way if it was my friend or my family member that struggled. And since starting Bracken's Kitchen, I don't know how many times I've heard from somebody that I know, that my brother, my cousin, somebody, you fed them, I heard this, whatever. It's like, we're not that far removed from somebody who's really struggling. Right. And if it was somebody that I cared about, loved, I'd want to know that someone is out there giving them the basic human dignity when they serve them.
Yeah. Well, that touches on the next kind of element of servant leadership that I wanted to explore with you, and that's leading by service, which has this element of sort of sacrificing some personal comforts to uplift others, which is hard, right? That's a hard leadership concept to live out.
Yeah.
Because we have this innate need, I think, many of us, all of us, to maximize our own comfort level and maximize our own experience in this life. But oftentimes that comes at the expense of others, unless you are this, practicing servant leadership. So talk me through that.
Well, I mean, I always go to Jesus, who was the best example of servant leadership, but we don't have to go that far back. You can look at Gandhi, you could look at Mother Teresa. There's so many people over the years, so many nonprofit leaders, Homeboy Industries, Gregory Boyle, who runs that organization. There's so many people have shown us what that's like and what that means. And I believe strongly that love is a verb. It's an action. We've learned, or we toss around love like it's a feeling, and people fall into love. Like they're walking down the road and tripped and fell in the ditch. I fell in love. And I'm walking down the road and I tripped and I fell out of love. Well, that's crazy if you really think about it. Love is a choice you make. And, to love someone through thick and thin, it's an action. You have to put that to work every day. And whether you're loving your wife, your kids, I mean, I got three amazing kids. I would lay down my life for each and every one of them. But like most parents, there was times when it was really, really hard to love them. But
Right.
you choose to anyhow. And that's the best example. I got an amazing team of people working here, but sometimes it's really hard to love them. But you have to. And that means you have to be willing to be uncomfortable and inconvenienced. And otherwise, you just go through life from relationship to relationship to relationship, and you never build anything that's real, that's lasting. And anybody who's got a long, strong marriage knows it takes work, and you have to put in the work. And we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves. So that servant leadership, I'm not being critical of it. It's a cool thing we pass around, but I think it's inside of all of us. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. said years ago that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? We all have this inside of our souls, this inside of our deep being. It's, how are we helping other people? We all want to help other people. It feels good.
Yeah.
The gift of giving is so much better than receiving, but we just got to be willing to be uncomfortable, and we got to put our own agenda on the side. And we live in a world today, Chris, where you got to keep moving. You got to keeping up with the Joneses. Life is so fast. And if you're not, up with the latest and greatest, if you're not making more money, if you're not moving into bigger houses, bigger cars, fancier clothes, whatever. I mean, it's just go, 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 go. And, servant leadership, loving people is just the opposite. Slow down and stop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I know without a doubt, I've my great grandfather, my great grandmother, and my grandparents, just salt of the earth, loving people. I saw them all to the end of their life, and as they were near their end, none of them was laying there wishing they had made more money or they had worked harder, they had done any of these things. Their memories,
Right.
Their memories, the most cherished things in their life were those memories and those things that they experience in their life through serving and loving other people.
Yeah, yeah, which is contrarian, right?
Yeah,
The sacrifices that you make, even if they appear to be a hardship, end up being the most valuable experiences of your life, as opposed to the new car that you buy, which
yeah,
is a fleeting joy,
yeah,
and quickly forgotten when health goes away or something else changes. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really, really good. And I love kind of this concept of leadership as living your values and influencing others through genuine care, though it might be sacrificial, because it puts your own comfort maybe deprioritizes your own comfort.
Yeah, I I said earlier about Bracken's kitchen has done more for me than anybody I've ever served. I've been changed to the soul level. I mean, if you ever were a Star Trek fan, you know that Spock had the famous Vulcan mind melt, and I really wish that there's some better way that I can share how I've been impacted through this work we've done. And I'm not all that, Chris, but I had a successful career in luxury hotels, and when I traveled, oftentimes it was business class. And when I stayed in a hotel, it was always a 5-star, 5-diamond hotel, the benefit of this life. And, I was blessed to be able to travel and cook from Hong Kong to Hawaii. And I've had some amazing experiences, but that means nothing without love, without the people that you surround yourself with. And, when I get old, when I'm, laying on my deathbed, or when I'm laying at like my father, who's almost 95 and or 90. He's home alone. He lost my mom a few years ago, and all he's got is his memories. All he's got is the things that he holds on to and inside. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't how much money he made at Sites Foods or,
Yeah, yeah,
all the cars he had over the years. There may be some fun memories of riding down the road in a car with his son or his daughters or his mom, his wife in the car. I mean, there's memories there, but it isn't the material things. the experiences that we have in life. And again, we're all different. We all have different levels that we're willing to be vulnerable and share ourselves. But the more we're willing to open up and allow people to know us as leaders, especially to get close to them, the better off we're going to be, and the better they're going to want to serve you. The better they want to be when your people know who you are and they know you're genuine and they know you're real. They'll go through walls to help you and serve you and support you.
Yeah. And so you're specifically here talking about that connection that you can form with people either through a simple hug or through working with them side by side for hours. But I love the idea that the connection is influence
Yeah.
because you have that opportunity to share, you have the opportunity to provide some modeling, you have the opportunity to set an example, just so that the connection has a way when you have that deep personal
Yeah.
connection, when you love, when you have greater opportunity to influence, right?
Yeah. I mean, many years ago when I was still in the hotel world, I went through one of my many moments in life and I reconnected with my faith. I took my church's church network 7 hard attitudes and I turned them into the 7 culinary attitudes. And there's 7 attitudes, 7 standards, whatever you want to call it. It's a culture that is Bracken's Kitchen, how we lead. Every other week we have all staff meetings and all we talk about is culture, attitudes, the 7 culinary attitudes, how we can love each other better, how we can support them better. We're not talking about how we served the beef last week or what happened here or there. It's just all about people, because I've recognized that we have an opportunity to influence them not only at work but also at home in their personal lives, and that's profound. The very first culinary attitude: look to the interest of others.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to be inconvenienced, I've said it a couple of times, to help someone out, then you're never going to build a relationship with them.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times in my past life did I spend days, weeks, months, years working with a person that I knew very little about? Wives, kids, life, background, because that wasn't the culture. You came to work, you did the job, you're a 5-star, 5-diamond hotel. All you focus on was the customer, period. And there's people you spend so much of your life with, and you're like, who was he? What do I know about him? What's he going through? And everybody goes through things. So the more we get close to them, the more we talk to them, the more we know them, the more we're able to support them. And again, in the long run, it just builds a loyalty and just a respect that you want to work together better.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's wonderful. There seems to be some tension, though, if you perhaps just love too much or you focus too much on the relationship or the connection, that you might lose some of the operational excellence or the business side of
Yeah.
running the operation. So how do you balance the sort of leadership of influence and the need to run a tight ship?
It's funny you say that. I told you I grew up in Hell's Kitchen. I became a little bit of that manager, that chef. I never crossed the line to insult any of my staff the way I was insulted.
Yeah.
But I could drop an F-bomb with the best of them back in the day. Where on the F is a B? I need that effing this, that. I mean, it was
Right.
the world I grew up in high pressure.
Yeah, I've seen The Bear. I've seen that
Yeah.
TV show. I get it.
Yeah. But then when I went through this change, I got to work with a man for a second time. His name was Ray Jacoby. He runs the Newport Harbor Yacht Club now. And there's 2 quotes he had that had profound impact on me that I hold them near and dear today. Number 1 is, don't confuse my kindness with weakness.
Yeah, perfect.
Now I'm going to forget the second one now that I'm on the spot here.
Well, don't confuse
but that's important right there. I'm going to love you and I'm going to support you and I'm going to take care of you, but I still got a job to do as a leader of Bracken's Kitchen. I still have to make things run. I'm still going to hold you accountable if something goes wrong. But I don't have to be mean about it.
Yeah.
So, kindness doesn't mean weakness, and holding someone accountable doesn't mean you have to be yelling and screaming at them.
Right. Right. Or that you've lost your love for them, or
yeah,
your concern for their well-being.
yeah.
Right.
Well, it's like our children. We love our children. Hopefully, we're not cursing at them, calling them names when they make a mistake or they do something wrong.
Right.
Some parents, yeah, but hopefully we're nurturing them and trying to help them how to make better decisions, how to be wiser. If they did do something that requires some sort of discipline, and you're doing it with loving and kindness. And we work really hard here to follow a lot of the I'll say HR, if you will, guidelines, human resources guidelines, if you will, that I learned in the hotel world. And we do annual performance evaluations, and we do a lot of things. And one thing I remind my team all the time, if we do have to coach and counsel someone, if we're doing an annual performance evaluation, the goal is to help them learn and grow, not to punish them. So if someone messes up, but we do have to hold them accountable, if we do have to reprimand them, it's like a police officer. I know some people will say they've had bad experiences with police officers, but in the many times I've been pulled over because of my poor driving skills, it's always been, "Good afternoon, sir. May I please see your license and registration?" It was always kind, it's always polite, it's always proper. In the same way, as a leader in any organization, we can hold someone accountable, but we can do it with love and kindness so that they know we really are looking out for their best interest. We don't want you to make this mistake again. We want you to grow. So
that's right. Don't confuse discipline with punishment, right?
yeah,
It's an opportunity to learn and grow, as you said. Well, let's end with this question or line of thinking. What does leadership as influence, or leadership is influence, truly mean as you think about the daily work that you do in changing lives one meal at a time?
For me, every day when I come in, I walk the entire property. We got two different buildings, 20,000, just under 20,000 square feet. I go say good morning to everybody. I make sure I touch base with every employee. Sometimes that's hard because you walk in the door and people are already wanting something from you. We got an unwritten rule here that the last one to come in, and there's many of them until they're all here, is responsible for doing that. The first one that comes in and opens the kitchen, there's no one here to say hi to. So we kind of have this notion that when you walk in, go out of your way to say hi to people, make them feel that you're happy to see them. So I mean, that's the premise of that is how I operate every day of my life. I can get myself tied up in this office with countless things all day long, or going off property for meetings, but I go out of my way throughout the day to walk through the operations on a regular basis, and not just say hi to people. How you doing? How's your wife? How's your kids? To show a genuine interest, and make sure they know they're valued. I say it so often now, I feel like they don't, maybe it's lost its impact, but every day when someone's leaving, I thank them for their hard work today. And it's like, it's almost become a routine. It's like, man, they're probably going to think that's just something I say now. I'm going to have to change that up. Another little thing I just do, I just happen to look over here and think about it. This is a little box, got a whole bunch of little papers in here. This was given to me as a gift with this big thing that you're supposed to put affirmations in, whatever. I got rid of this big thing and I just kept this, and I actually have a file and a spreadsheet that I kind of keep track of it so that I'm fair and consistent how I share love to everybody. But I'll grab one of these pieces of paper out, just like that. I'll write a simple little note in it to somebody, and I'll just fold it up and hand it to them. And if I saw them do something good, thank you for your hard work with this, or sometimes it might be a scripture or a prayer, or so if I know someone's going through a tough time with a family member, I'll say something. But it's little nuggets that I can give them throughout the day, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's a word, whether it's talking to them. Just how can I, throughout the day, try to influence them for good, lift them up in a positive way, and make them feel like somebody really cares about them. And that's hard. I don't do this as often as I used to, but it's still there. And I need to do it regularly because we all want to know that our life matters, that we're appreciated, that people care about us.
Well, that's a take, or that's a wrap. You got to end on that. It's so perfect. I really do think that you've shared some incredible guidance and advice about how leadership is influence. And I have no doubt that the audience will reflect on what you've said, what you've shared, and be benefited by it in their own leadership journey, their own practice of leadership, wherever they might be. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for educating us, loving all of us, and telling us some things that we should know. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode today. And we're grateful for all of you plugging in and joining us. Want to encourage everyone to like and subscribe to Lead for Good, but also check out Mastering Fundraising and the Nonprofit Edge. All of these podcasts interview extraordinary nonprofit leaders, uncover their journeys, and provide some tricks, some wisdom about their expertise, as we learned from Bill today. But until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.